Hi everyone, my name's John, and in this video I give you an overview of the marketplace of dogs. The marketplace of dogs is a page on the beginner's template, and you can find a link to it in the information below. So the marketplace of dogs is a simple one-page marketplace allowing users to buy and sell dogs. On this page, the buyer can view dogs, add dogs to a list of their favourites, message the dog seller, or register as a dog seller. The seller can add a dog they would like to sell, mark the dog as sold, or edit the dog's information. So you will learn how to set up a page for two user types, how to set up a database with two user types, how to save and edit data, how to use custom states, how to display data, and how to filter and sort data. So let's do this. As always, I started by setting up the database for this page first. So the first thing I did was on the user data type, I added this field called dog seller, and that's a boolean, so a yes or no field type. And this will allow us to be able to tell if a user is a dog seller or not really easily. The next data type I created was the data type for the dogs, and this just holds all the information on the dogs. So you can see that mostly it's texts. Then there's a yes or no for if it's been sold, if the dog's been sold or not. And then we have for favorites, we have a list of users. So if if a user favorites a dog, they get added to that dog's list of users, the favorites list of users. Then the third data type is this dog seller data type, and this data type is used to keep the information about a dog seller. So this could actually be on the user data type, and if your app is relatively simple, you could add all this information there. I've kept it separate so that I know where the information for my separate users is kept, and therefore I've created a whole new data type. So with this one, we have the location and name, and that's it for the dog seller. And then we have the user. So that relates back to whoever the user is, whoever that dog seller is. So currently there are no privacy rules on the dogs or the dog seller data type. This is because they will be open to the public. Now let's check out the UI and see how that works. So this page is quite interesting in that we use one page for both the buyers and the sellers. And then we use a custom state to differentiate between the two. So we do that by having this custom state on the marketplace of dogs page, which is called sell, yes or no. By default, it's no. So that means that when the page loads, it's going to show the buy page. And then if we set that state as yes, it will show the sell page. And the way that happens is that we set conditions on certain groups so that they'll either be hidden or not hidden, depending on that state. And that's the same with these buttons and this text, so that depending on the state, it will show buy a dog instead of sell a dog. So the first group we have is this group title here. This will be shown in both conditions for both buy and sell, but we change the texts of each text and button when it's on the different conditions. So for the title, it's buy a dog when you're on the buy page. When you're on the sell page, it's sell your dog. And then if the user is looking at their favorite dogs, it will say your favorite dogs. Then we have this condition here so that the alignment changes under a certain width. And that's to do with the responsiveness of making the app mobile friendly. I've actually done a whole nother video about this, so you can find a link for that in the information below. So then with this text and button, we've done the same. It says want to sell a dog when you're on the buy page, and then want to buy a dog when you're on the sell page. And that is the same with this button here. So this button here actually will change the state so that you can switch between the two pages. But I'll come to that later. So the next group we have is the group filter here. So that's actually a hidden group, and that's because it's only shown when the user is on the buy page. So when marketplace of dogs, sell is no. That then becomes visible. When it's not visible, we collapse this element's height so that instead of leaving a big gap here, this will close up and look normal. So this group consists of three things. The first button is view your favorite dogs, and that button will change the repeating group to show a user's favorite dogs. I'll come into the workflows on that later, but when it's showing someone's favorite dogs, it changes the button text to say view all dogs. So that's a different custom state to the custom state on the whole page. So the next thing in this group is this search input, which is just a standard search input. The way the search works is when this is filled, the repeating group will read the data that's within this input. But when it's empty, the repeating group will just show everything. So, and then there's a filter button. The filter button shows a pop-up which allows the user to filter the repeating group or filter the dogs. So before talking over the repeating group, I'll just show you the filter pop-up because this pop-up can affect what's shown in the repeating group. So the filter pop-up is just really simple, and it first has a sort drop down, and this allows a user to select price low to high or price high to low, which will change the repeating group around. We then have the dog type. For the dog type, this is a list of all the dog types that are currently available on the app from the users have entered. And then we add in this unique elements here so that it only shows the unique list of dog types. And then lastly, we have a price minimum and a price maximum. So these inputs are set as currency and dollars. So now we have one main repeating group for this page, and this repeating group is used for all three scenarios. So the first scenario is to display all the dogs that are for sale. The second scenario is to display a dog's favorite users, and the third scenario is to display a the dogs that a user is selling. And we have different conditions to display to make sure that the right dogs are being displayed at the right times. So for the first scenario, dogs for sale, we will show all the dogs that are on the database. So this is the main data source search, and we search for the dogs. And then all of these constraints here are either for the search or the filters. So the first one, any field contains input searches value, is any field that has any information that is the same as within this search input, then it will show those dogs. So we then have price greater than or equal to input price min's value, or price less than or equal to input price max's value. So that means that when users are on the filter pop-up and they enter a certain amount into their price, this will make sure that only the dogs within that range will be shown. And then lastly, the type equals drop down dog types value. This means that only dogs from that type of dog that's been selected will be shown. To make sure that all of these work properly, the ignore empty constraints box has been ticked here, because otherwise, if that wasn't ticked, it would just show no dogs because all of the inputs are empty to start with. We then have the sort by, two sort bys. Firstly, we sort by sold. So we still show any dogs that have been sold at the moment, but we send them to the bottom of the list. And then that's why this is the first sort, because we want that to happen no matter what. Then lastly, we have the price sort, and this is determined by the drop down and a custom state. So when the drop down is selected as price low to high, that will set a custom state that means that it will show them in the right order here. So the second scenario is dogs that have been favorited. So we show dogs that have been favorited when the marketplace of dogs sell is no, and this repeating group's favorites is yes. That is when we will show the favorite dogs. And to show favorite dogs, we've got pretty much the same search as we had on the previous dogs for sale, but we've added this extra constraint, which is favorite contains current user. So what that means is that it will only show the current user's favorite. It will only show dogs that the current user has favorited. Other than the last scenario is dogs that a user is selling. So when the marketplace of dogs sell, custom state sell is yes, we do a different search, which is search for dogs, and the seller equals the current user. So if the seller is the current user, then it will show all their dogs that they've uploaded to sell. And that's it. That's the three scenarios for the repeating group. So within the repeating group, we have the group dogs. And within this group, we have every element that shows the dog's information. So we have the dog's picture here. We have the dog's name, the information about the dog's price, and then we have this buy button and this favorite icon. So the favorite icon is what a user will press if they want to favorite a dog. if they've already favorited that dog, then when they press it, it will unfavorite that dog. When it's favorited, we actually change the icon. So we change the icon 2 times. We have 2 conditions. So the first one is when the icon's hovered, we'll change it from this star outline to a filled star. And then when a current user is in the dog's favorites, then we will also fill this icon. So that just shows a user which dogs they've favorited. Then we have this buy button. So the buy button it's only used for users who can buy the dog. So we don't need it to show for users who are selling the dog because they're not going to buy their own dog. So if a parent group's dog seller is the current user, and the dog has not been sold yet, we hide this element so they can't press it. So then lastly, if the dog's been sold, we will change the element. We'll make it so that the button is now red, and instead of saying buy, it will say sold. So when a user is looking at buying a dog, they will obviously press this buy button here, and that will show the pop-up buy dog. We display the data of the current dog that the user click the buy button within, and that means that it will say here, message the owner about the parent group's dog's name, just so that a user knows they're messaging about the right dog. Then they can enter their name and enter their message, this is wrong here, so we can change that. And then they can send that message, and that will send a message to the dog seller. At this stage, it doesn't actually send the message because this is all just dummy data, but you can set that up really easily so that it will. Okay, then we have 2 groups underneath the repeating group. So the first one, this is shown when the repeating group is empty. So when the count of the repeating group is 0. And this basically just tells the user that there are no dogs for sale at this time. If they're on their sale page, it will tell them that you have no dogs for sale at this time. And if they try to look at their favorites and they have no dogs favorited, it will say you have not favorited any dogs, and they will be barking mad. So just a little joke. And then the last group we have is the group add a new dog. And this is only shown when the user is on the sale page. And this button opens the pop-up add a new dog. So it allows a dog seller to add a new dog. And this pop-up is here. So this pop-up is used for both adding a dog and editing a dog. So the way that a user can edit a dog is if they just click on the dog. If they click on the group dog and they're the person who's selling that dog, it will show this pop-up, but with the information we need in place. Yep, then when they fill out the information and press save, it will either save that data or edit a current dog and then close the pop-up. So that is most of the UI. There is one more pop-up, which is the dog seller's information. So before someone can become a dog seller, we just need their name and location, and then they will be signed up as a dog seller. So we've got a super simple pop-up to do that. So now let's take a look at the workflows that makes this page work. So this page consists of 23 workflows, and most of the events on this page are triggered by either the click of a button or the click of an icon. There's one workflow event here that is triggered by a input or a drop down a drop down's value changing. There is also some buttons that have multiple workflows. So this sell a dog button here actually can do one of 4 things. So we've got a different workflow for different conditions. So I'll go over all of that. So let's start by going through each one. So we have the button, add a new dog. This is the button that's shown for the seller, and that will simply just show the pop-up add dog. We then have the button buy. This is the button within the repeating group, so we'll have one for each dog. And when this button's clicked, we show the pop-up buy dog, but before we do that, we'll display the data of the parent group's dogs. So we'll display the data of the dog that this buy button is within in the same group. So we then have the button done, and there's 2 button dones. There's one in the filter pop-up and one in the seller pop-up. So for the filter pop-up, it's really simple. It just hides the pop-up filter. It can do this because we know that all of the filters will already be in place because they're put in place within the repeating group. So we can just hide the filter. We then have the button. So the next button done is within the seller pop-up. So that is when we want to create a dog seller. So this pop-up is shown by the seller dog button when a user tries to click on this and they're not already a dog seller. So what happens here is that firstly, we make changes to the user to set their dog seller as yes. We then create their information from the inputs they've added. So we create a new dog seller set up for them. We then set the state of the marketplace as we set the custom state sell on the marketplace of dogs element as yes. So this will show the sell page. We then reset the inputs and hide that pop-up. So the next button is the view your favorite dogs button. And this button performs one of 3 tasks depending on different conditions. So the first condition is when this button's pressed and a current user is not logged in, we will trigger a custom event from a reusable element. So the event we trigger is the login event in the header 2. So what that will do is show the pop-up to allow a user to log in or sign up. So the reason we do that is because if a user can't look at their favorites if they're not logged in. Next, if you press this button and you are logged in, but the repeating group's dog's favorites is no, so that's the custom state is no, we will set that custom state of favorites on the repeating group dog's element. We will set that as yes. So then the lastly, we will do pretty much the opposite, which is when this is yes, we will set it as no. So what that does is it changes the repeating group so that when it's yes, it will show the user's favorites and favorite dogs. And when it's no, it will show all of the dogs. So then we have the button filter, which is simple button just to show the pop-up filter. So the next button we'll look at is this save button here. So this is the save button that's within the pop-up add dogs. And this button does one of two things. It creates a new dog in the database when the parent group's dog is empty, and it makes changes to a dog in the database when parent group's dogs is not empty. So this is because we know that if the parent groups is empty, then there isn't we're not editing a dog, so we need to create a new one. And if it is not empty, then we need to make changes to a dog. So as you can see, we create a dog, and using all the inputs within the pop-up, we set them all as the correct data here. And we set that dog as sold as no, because as you can see, we're creating a new dog, and if you're not going to create a new dog if you've already sold it. Then when we make changes to a dog, we do exactly the same, but we change the sold equals ionic toggle A is checked. So that is a hidden element within the pop-up, which can be seen here. So when that is checked, it will mark the dog as sold equals yes. If it's not checked, it will mark the dog as sold equals no. We then reset the pop-up, reset the elements, and hide the pop-up. So the next button is the sell a dog button. So the one here that can either be sell a dog or buy a dog. And this button does one of four things, and therefore it has the 4 workflow events you can see here. And it only does one at a time, depending on the conditions. So this first condition here is if the marketplace of dogs sell is no, so that if the custom state sell is no, and the current user is logged in, and the current user is not a dog seller yet, then we show the pop-up dog seller info. The next thing it can do is if the custom state sell is no, and the current user is logged in, and the current user dog seller is yes, then it will change the state of sell to yes, which means it will show the sell page. Then when the marketplace of dogs sell is no and the current user is not logged in, we use this action again, which is trigger login from header 2 to show the login or sign up the pop-up. And then finally, when the marketplace of dogs sell is yes, we will change the state back to no so that it will show the buy page. So when I say it will show the buy page, it will show the sell page. They're both the same page. It's just what the user will see. So the next one is the button send. This is the button that is within the BioDog pop-up. So when this button is pressed, at the moment, it will just reset the pop-up and hide it, and it will give an error alert telling the user that the message was sent. But we don't currently have an action in here that will send a message. That's because at the moment this is all just dummy data and they're not actual dogs for sale. But if you wanted to add that in, you will add that in here. So the next one is the group dogs. So this one is different slightly because it's not an actual button and you're clicking the group, but when a user clicks the group here and that user is the owner of that dog, so they are the dog seller for that dog, they will see the pop-up add dog with that dog that they pressed, with that dog's data shown in the group. So all the inputs will show that dog's data. So then for all of the 4 pop-ups, we have an icon within them, which just allows us to hide that pop-up. So we have 4 of them here, 1 in each pop-up. Then we have this icon favorite, which is the icon within the group dogs. So every dog has one of these icons and it allows a user to favorite a dog. So when this icon's pressed, we actually have one of 3 workflow events will run. So depending on the conditions again. So the first one is if a user's not logged in, we will trigger the pop-up we will show the pop-up login to allow a user to log in. Because again, they can't favorite a dog if they're not logged in. Then if the user clicks this and they are already a favorite, if they've already favorited this dog, then we make changes to the dog to remove that current user from the dog's favorites. So that user no longer has that dog as a favorite. Then we do the opposite. If the user has not favorited that dog, we will add them as a favorite to that dog. And then when they add it, we'll send a success message saying that that dog has been favorited. So the last workflow is this drop-down sort value is changed. So this workflow is slightly different because it's not like a button where you can click on the button and press start/edit workflow, because it's an input. It's the input within the pop-up filter here. So there's no option to start or edit a workflow. So to make this workflow work, you have to go into the workflows tab and then click here to add an event. And you've got lots of different options because you can trigger workflows in lots of different ways. It doesn't just have to be from a click of an icon or a click of a button. So in this case, we do it and we click here for when an input's value is changed. That then gives us this, and we choose the drop-down sort. So whenever that drop-down is changed, this workflow will run. And what this workflow does, it will do one of 2 things. It will set a state of price sort as no when the user selects price low to high, or it will set this custom state as yes when that drop down sort's value is price high to low. So as we discussed earlier in the repeating group, this will change how the order in which the dogs are displayed. So if you get stuck when you're working with the beginner's template, just check the notes. Every element, every workflow has a note on it just explaining exactly how it works. So just check them and it might help you work out how that element works. So that's the marketplace of dogs. If you have any questions, please leave me a comment or reach out to me and I'll try my best to answer them. I have another video on this page which shows you how I made it mobile responsive, so check that out. You can go back to the home page on the beginner's template, and I've got other pages that you can learn that will help you learn Bubble. I'm looking to add a load more pages as soon as possible. So thank you and good luck.